I ended up doing a cardio workout instead and some floor exercises. Hey, I showed up, I put in some effort, all good. This morning, I dropped Jess off at the train station. She was going out with a friend, and I went and had a coffee at Tram Stop, my favourite, and started work on my next blog post, which the working title of at the moment is Space to Learn. So as I was going to bed last night, the idea for Space to Learn came to me. And I just quickly jotted down a few ideas, a couple of examples from my recent experience that have nudged this into my consciousness as an important topic. I've also taken inspiration from a couple of books that I've either read recently or have been reading. This one, Imagine It Forward by Beth Comstock, is about innovation, but she talks a lot about what I would regard as basic learning practices. She calls it discovery. And making time for discovery. And then this is a book called Create Space that I picked up at the State Library yesterday, which talks specifically about space for a number of different things, about creating space to think, to connect, to do, and to be. Being kind of the turnover point between one year and another, I always make space to do a lot of reflection in this period. And I've also been doing a lot of professional development planning, mentoring, so helping people to come up with a professional development plan for their most important goal for 2019. And one thing I invariably talk to people about is the importance of a reflective practice. And we look for the trigger points or times in their diary or day when they would be able to reflect. So what I've noticed working with a couple of my clients recently is that the leaders of these learning and development teams I'm working with are so busy and overwhelmed. Well, one is overwhelmed, the other seems to handle the busyness but is nonetheless constantly busy, and both have struggled to find time in their diaries and then to meet the commitments in their diaries to work with me on investing in building their team's capability. And you'd think if anyone was going to invest in building their team's capability and make it important and find the time, it would be people in learning and development. This book, Create Space, talks about some different forms of research, various research studies, which talk about some of the indicators that we don't have enough space and that we are burnt out. So a 2015 survey of UK GPs found that 3/4 of them were emotionally exhausted. 92% of us feel stressed all or a lot of the time. So I want to tackle the negative impacts of this busyness within organisations on results that matter, including productivity, but also on creativity, on the quality of decision making, on learning, and put forward a different vision, a vision where space is made for people to think, to reflect and to learn, rather than all of that being just kind of squashed out and us getting all caught up in activity and mistaking activity for productivity. And I need to link it to the continuous learning theme, of course. So how it links to continuous learning is that there's this push for continuous learning to happen, and there's a focus in organisations on providing platforms and resources so that people can learn continuously for themselves. But I think what's often neglected or not talked about is that unless we give people space, as in both time and to some degree physical space to learn, we're missing part of the mix that's really important. So I think that's a connection between all this busyness and continuous learning and the space being needed to learn. So I started gathering my thoughts, key points in the flow of my thoughts. I've just highlighted in yellow. I've got some dot points, a little bit of research, looked at some stories, just started pulling my thoughts and the flow of this blog together for a mentoring session tomorrow with Katie Mack. I actually think this blog is going to flow a lot easier, like I'm going to be able to write it a lot easier than some of last year's blogs. I've got clarity already on what I want to say, and I've got a lot of ideas, data and stories I can include in it. So let's see what Katie Mack has to say tomorrow when we have our mentoring session. Okay, there is another piece of writing I've been wanting to get to for 2 or 3 weeks, and I thought I had a deadline of the 25th of January. It's an article for the Australian Institute of Training and Development's magazine. So this is the most recent episode of the Training and Development magazine. It's aimed at learning and development professionals. It's some of the topics that were in the last episode, and each episode is themed. As you can see, this one is on learning transfer. So the next magazine, I think they come out 2 monthly. The next magazine, the theme is Empowering Learners, which is perfectly aligned with some of the findings from Towards Maturity's Learner Intelligence. So I proposed writing an article that drew on the most recent analysis published in December 2018 of the learning preferences, motivations and barriers for a sample of 10,000 workers that was taken between 2017 and 2018. One hitch I've just discovered today. Yikes, this is due on the 15th of January, not the 25th of January, which was the date I had in my mind. Fortunately, I'd already created an outline which is picking up on 2 key themes from the research. One is around people learning through personal connection. The other is through autonomous access to resources. And I'd already brainstormed a list of ways we can empower people to utilise these 2 key preferences for how they learn. It kind of works out better because I've got no option but to really go hard at getting that article finished. It's only 900 words anyway, the size of a blog post, but nowhere near as much crafting as a dangerous blog, the kind of blog I write with Katie Mack, my opinion piece blogs. So I'll get it done, kick it into touch, and that will free up my headspace and workspace for creating my conference presentation for London, the second week of Feb, and writing the dangerous blog post. It's not a problem really.